You will hear a man phoning a London tour agency to ask about tours around London. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now listen and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hi, London Premier Tours. How can I help?
Hi, I'm coming to London with my family and we'd like to see the city. We just wanted some information on the best way to do this.
Okay, I'll see if I can help. Firstly, when are you coming and for how long?
Let me see. We're leaving the U.S. at the end of June. We're going to stay with friends in Oxford for a week, so we'll arrive in London around the 10th of July. It will just be for a few days as we fly to Paris on the 13th of July.
And how many people?
I'm coming with my sister and our parents.
And do you know what kind of things you want to see when you are here? Is there anything in particular?
Not really. We just want to see the main sights, Historical places, I guess. The places that London is famous for.
Well, as you only have a short amount of time, the best way to do that is probably by a bus tour. The tour costs £29 for adults and £14 for children for the day.
What time does it start?
Well, basically the ticket is valid for the whole day. The first bus is at 7 a.m., but buses depart every 20 minutes throughout the day up until 4 p.m. 6 p.m. It's summer now, so the buses run later. So you can start and finish whenever you want within those times.
So do you have to stay on the same bus the whole time?
No. It's a hop-on, hop-off service, so you can get off at whichever stop you like. You can then stay there as long as you like and then get back on another bus when it arrives.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
What sights do you see on the tour then?
That depends on which route you choose. There are 3 routes, and we call them the red, yellow, and blue routes. There are many attractions, but the main attractions on the red route are St. Paul's Cathedral, the London Eye, and Buckingham Palace.
I'm not too worried about the cathedral, but I know my parents would enjoy the London Eye, so we'd better see that. What about the other routes?
The most famous places on the yellow route are Big Ben and the Houses of Parliament.
Ah, both of those would be interesting to see. And the blue route?
Harrods and Hyde Park Corner are on that route.
I'd like to see Harrods, but I don't think we'll have time for shopping, and I don't know Hyde Park, so we'll not go on that route. So we'd probably choose the red or yellow. What do we have to do about booking?
If you want to book, you can do that with one of our customer service operators on the phone. Or otherwise, you can go to our website and book. Some people just arrive on the day and buy a ticket on the bus. But if it's full, you may not be able to get a seat.
Probably best if we book in advance then, so I'll do it on the internet in a few weeks when we know exactly what dates will be there.
Okay. Well, it can get very busy in the summer over the 3 months of June to August, so it's probably best to book at least a week before you come. But you still have about 6 weeks before you leave, so you have plenty of time to think about it.
Okay, thanks. You've been a great help.
That is the end of section 1. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 2. Section 2. You'll hear a talk by a security worker from Sydney Airport who is introducing the day-to-day operations of the Australian Quarantine Service. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 17. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 17.
Hi everyone and welcome to Sydney Airport. Today I'll be giving you the inside information on the day-to-day operations of the Australian Quarantine Service here. We hope to provide you with a better understanding of why such heavy security regulations are necessary by educating you on how we operate and why we do the things we do. We're not here to try to persuade you to fly through Sydney Airport, though we hope you'll find your experience relatively stress-free and comfortable. First things first, our personnel. Can anyone guess how many people work at Sydney Airport? We have 200 alone working in Terminal 2. So can you guess how many in the whole airport? I heard someone say 360. That's getting closer. What? Did someone say 2,000? That's way too high. Sydney Airport actually employs 440 people. A lot, right? And about half of those employees work in security-related matters. Moving on to our not-so-human employees, let's come and see our favourite pooch, Milton. Milton is our best drug-sniffing dog on the force. He's friendly to most people. You can even come pet him at the end of our tour. Burnouts, beware though. He'll find everything. Notice that even though there are so many of us around him, Milton stays quite calm. This is the precise reason he was chosen for the job. Dogs that are chosen are not predisposed to sniff out different narcotics. That's something we teach them already. So here's a part of the airport most people never notice, the cargo transport terminal. This is where packages are shipped to and from. Normally, we ship around 4,400 packages per month. In this airport alone, over 52,000 packages were shipped in and out over the past year. We ship to and from 170 different countries. Not bad, eh? Probably it will go up to over 72,000 packages this year. And despite over 100 flights in and out of here daily, the number of lost or delayed packages is impressively low. If you send your package through here, rest assured we'll get it where it's going. Let's move on to the area most of us are familiar with, the passenger terminals. In order to be allowed into this area, you must pass through security with your ticket and, if you're travelling internationally, your passport. If you're travelling domestically, you just need a legal form of ID. If you don't have those, you will not be allowed to pass through security and board your flight. During the security scan, your carry-on items will be checked for dangerous items such as weapons, sharp objects, and liquids that exceed our specified limit. If you attempt to pass any of the prohibited items on this list posted at the entrance, you are still allowed to board the plane, but you'll be given a warning and your item will be confiscated. Don't worry, we will not arrest you for having too much shampoo in your bag or anything like that. We also search your carry-ons and parcels for any perishable items. We prohibit the transportation of local vegetation and prohibit parcels containing any insects in them. You may or may not have learnt about this in biology class, but when some plants are introduced to a new environment, they spread wildly and wipe out the current species around it. It is important to control the introduction of new plants into an ecosystem, so we must prohibit the transport of any fertile seeds. So what happens to parcels containing possibly suspicious items? It's of course something we do not take lightly here. If an object passes through the scanner that appears suspicious in any way, it is separated out for manual search by a member of our trained security personnel. If an illegal plant or simple sharp object like a pocket knife is found, It is simply disposed of in our biohazard waste containers, and the package itself is returned to the sender, or passenger if it is for a passenger flight. More serious weapons are reported to higher authorities for investigation.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 18 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 18 to 20.
As far as parcel security, the material of the parcel is important. For shipped goods, the most common material used and the most widely accepted is paper. Make sure it is packed sturdy enough with no rips or tears. We've definitely had packages rip open before due to haphazard packing. A more common problem, though, is the package labels. When an item does not make it to the right place, this is the most common reason. The label may not be in the right place or marked clearly enough. If you're receiving any items from abroad that must be declared, please remember our guidelines in order to ensure the timely delivery of your item. Make sure it is packed correctly, and we ask that you notify customs between 2 and 10 days within the item's scheduled arrival date. OK, before we move on, are there any questions?
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Hi. Okay, so you're John and Sarah, I'm Neil, and you're having some problems with a project you're doing on the marketing module of the Business Studies course. Is that right?
Yes, it's the one where we have to read the case studies of 6 businesses and assess their marketing and identify the main problems each one had.
So what exactly is the problem?
Well, we've been doing quite a lot of reading for it. Some of the readings we've looked at are quite difficult, but we still understand them, and they're interesting, so that's okay. It's taking a lot longer than we thought, though, so we're wondering if we can have an extension. We have a lot of other assignments too.
Well, extensions can be granted. However, it sounds like you're having issues with the planning of your time. Neither of you are sick or have had an accident, which are the only reasons that extensions are usually granted. The university's scheduling of deadline dates is organised so you can complete things on time.
OK, we understand. We thought that would probably be the case.
Well, let's see how you're doing with it. So you were given readings on 6 different companies. You needed to examine the main weaknesses of each company with regard to their marketing strategy. What did you find out about each company?
Let's start with Stack Stationery. They were very experienced in marketing, as they have been in the stationery market for such a long time. Their profits have generally tended to increase continuously for many years. However, they had issues with their staff because they felt that too much money was being spent on marketing, but their wages did not increase for such a long time.
Princeton Windows were quite successful initially, as their marketing led to an increase in sales of 50%. However, this decreased again after a few months, so it just led to profits for a short time. They need to think about how they can sustain any increase in profits for longer periods.
MK Cars focused on the wrong thing, because they didn't really understand who their target market was. Most of their buyers of cars are young people, but they advertised in newspapers that older people usually read. It would have been better to go for magazines popular with the younger generation. You must learn everything you can about who you are selling to.
Lakeside Golf was probably the most successful of the 6 companies. They managed to generate a long-term increase in membership over a 3-year period. The only real issue they had was that they weren't ready for the increase in numbers of people coming to play golf, so some people started to complain about the service there.
Bryson's Meat seemed to be a bit of a disaster really all round. They actually saw a drop in their numbers of buyers, though it seems fairly sure that this was related to other problems outside of the company, rather than their marketing. There was a scare about meat during the period we are studying, and that meant that people bought less. So it may not actually be the company's fault.
Mojo's Music Shop, which sells CDs and DVDs, did pretty well. Their sales have been continuously increasing, and this is very good as they are in a very difficult market. A lot of people aren't buying music from shops anymore as they download it instead, so to keep going in that situation shows that they had a very successful marketing campaign. They will have to work hard on this though, due to the number of websites online providing the same service.
Well, from listening to what you've told me, it seems like you have a fairly good understanding. For the assignment, you also have to say what you think will happen in the future. Let's choose Mojo's Music Shop. What about you, Sarah?
The company was established many years ago, and I'm fairly confident that this company can continue to be successful. As I said, they have shown that they have survived in a very competitive market. They had a very strong advertising campaign, and they seem very good at knowing where the market is going and how to change. What about you, John?
Well, I'm not so sure actually. There are just so few music shops that manage to survive these days. I do agree that they have been very innovative, but too many people want to buy things online, as it is so much easier and usually cheaper. Most young people don't even have DVD players these days and just listen to things on their phones. So I think eventually they will cease operating like most others.
That's two very different opinions. It's been said that they have a very good management team, but I'm not sure I agree with that, as they're a bit inexperienced. I would disagree with you, Sarah, and say actually that their advertising campaign, although good, needs to be improved and more original in order to keep sales high. As John says, it's such a competitive market, they need to do everything they can.
Now turn to Section 4. Section 4. You will hear a lecture about how to choose flooring materials. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
We've been talking about choosing building materials in the last week. Now, a great many factors influence the choice of building materials. You can't make a house of cards, right? And people who live in glass houses and all that. Anyhow, today I'd like to say a few words about flooring. Some artificial materials can be used, like plastic for instance, which offer mixed blessings when used as a flooring surface. On the one hand, plastic is cheaper than nearly any other alternative, short of bare ground. Plastic also does not warp like wood. On the other hand, the best that can be said about plastic is that it looks like wood or stone. However, it cannot replace the real materials. As I have mentioned, I'm fixing up a new house. The decorator my wife hired told me plastic does a great job of looking exactly like plastic. Besides, it scratches easily, fades or discolours, and starts cracking within a year or two. So, if you're fitting out a sleazy hotel or plan to live in a trailer park, go with the plastic. Really though, for all intents and purposes, this leaves us with wood or stone as choices for flooring. Stone and wood are alike in at least one respect. Both go through processing before they can be put to use. Since few of us cut our own lumber or quarry our own stone, this is not perhaps a pressing concern. Still, do-it-yourselfers would do well to remember to buy only properly seasoned wood. Unseasoned wood warps, and a warped floor quickly becomes firewood, and its owner quickly becomes poorer. Likewise, except for dull-hued materials like slate or sandstone, most stone floors are polished before installation. The choice goes well beyond just wood or stone. Each type requires many further considerations. A few special remarks are called for when considering wood. For example, as always, aesthetics, personal taste and layout all play roles, as well as the type of house or room. Oh, and certainly don't forget the cost. When it comes to cost, a rule of thumb is that the softer and less exotic the wood, the lower the cost. In the US, for instance, pine is both ubiquitous and cheap. Mahogany is imported and exorbitantly expensive. If you're on any kind of budget when remodeling, it's really helpful to remember to go for the softer woods. Aside from cost, there are still lots of different factors that are important in choosing the best flooring for the job. Continuing with the example of wood, one must consider the effects of each type of wood on the mood of the room. When selecting the best wood to use, particular attention needs to be paid to its grain patterns, texture and colour. In rooms where relaxation or deep thought is the aim, say bedrooms or the study, dark, strong-grained woods are the rule. Here, the grain ought to match the furniture for a feeling of homogeneity. In rooms where activity and motion are typical, the dining room or living room, lighter, finer-grained lumber is more suitable. In such a setting, the wood grain might be useful in offering a contrast to the furniture. This leads to a feel of subconscious excitement in keeping with the room's function. In either case, though, consult a decorator. It is a decorator's job to know what materials to use to fit the function of the room. Though some things about putting together a room are subjective and based on one's individual taste, materials appropriate to a room's function are much more straightforward. A decorator takes the needs of the customer and uses a mathematical formula rather than subjective words. Since feelings vary from person to person, verbal descriptions of wood types tend to be ambiguous. You want the wood you select, not something approximate. And if you do decide to do it yourself, remember that all wood must be treated with preservatives to enhance its appearance and preserve its natural beauty. In the case of stone, or quarry tile, as flat-cut flooring stone is properly called, a new set of considerations must be weighed up. Simple colour aside, the degree of reflection must be kept in mind. This is called the reflectance rate, which is expressed in a number between 0.0 and 1.0, depending on the amount of light it reflects. At one end of the scale is polished silver. At a rating of 1.0, this shiny surface reflects nearly all of the light directed at it. Numbers closer to 0 describe materials that absorb more light. Moving down the scale a bit, we see that plastic that has been painted white has a rate of 0.8, which makes sense. We know that the colour white reflects all other colour, while black absorbs all colour, and plastic itself is a relatively reflective material. Materials that are denser and darker have reflectance rates much closer to 0. The quarry tile I mentioned a while ago has a rate of 0.1. As you may know, quarry tile is generally dark brown and made from clay, so it is quite dense. Of course, there is considerable variation among types of quarry tile because of the hue or treatment of the clay during its creation. Does anyone have any guesses as to what material may have a rate of almost 0.0? We can guess most of these materials are black in colour, but plastic, wood and even stone reflect some light. One material with a rate of almost 0.0 is black velvet. The texture produces almost no shine at all. Carrara marble, despite its white hue, is actually lower in reflectivity than black onyx. In any case, the fact that tiles vary somewhat should not be forgotten. A highly reflective floor would not be suitable in a library. It would be indispensable in a ballroom, should your home be large enough to feature one. Again, a rule of thumb is that light means lively. Since form and material follow function, one should only use the more reflective materials in rooms where the cultivation and expression of energy is important. Bear in mind, too, that most types of stone cost more than all but the rarest of wood. Of course, there is no reason why some rooms of a house should not feature wood floors or other stone tiles. You can even mix the two. A room with wood panels on the walls can have a beautiful stone floor. My bedroom has white birch walls and a light blue slate floor. The place looks like a Russian hunting lodge. Remember, though, go with what feels right for you. Good taste and the laws of interior design are the homeowner's servants, not his master. It's only beautiful when you decide it is. I mean, you're the one who lives there, not the decorator, right? Okay, are there any questions?
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.